there is at least one plant that has the sequestration wells right there on their property.
We're doing events like we're going to be doing with Comstock coming up, and it's just right now it's we've kind of gotten into a rhythm, and we like doing what we're doing, and it's been really rewarding. So for right now, we're kind of just rolling with it and having fun.
If we don't drive home the negative consequences of not doing it, and we don't make people aware of those things that they're not doing that can help the culture in their business, they're not going to do it.
Come with an open mind. If you're a person who's hesitant to social media, I definitely understand that some people do not see a value in it. And I do think social media can be a massive waste of time if you're not using it correctly. So if you're skeptical, that is fine with me.
Kind of the stereotypical State Farm corn and soybeans. We just rotate every year. So just shy of 2,000 acres.
It sounds awesome. I know where I'm in Des Moines, Iowa. I enjoy telling stories and telling our story and telling what happened to us business-wise. You know, there was a lot of good and positive things. There's been negative things. There's been a lot of mistakes. You know, a lot of what we learned from is like, oh, we screwed that up. We could have done that better.
Family Farm Masterclass that'll be coming up in February in Des Moines, Iowa. Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome back to the Comstock channel. I'm Marlin Bohling with you. Always a pleasure to visit with you about ag-related items. And I am honored to bring on board Scott VanderWal, the president of the South Dakota Farm Bureau. He is with us right now. And Scott, if you would, I'd like you to address a press release that came out last week. And it was originated, I believe, from the Farm Bureau, your state Farm Bureau, and the South Dakota corn growers in support of a new way to approach eminent domain in the state. For the benefit of our viewers that may not be from South Dakota, I know that's a little bit of an unusual situation where you are there. Can you give us a little background on that?
Well, glad to be with you this morning. And this issue over carbon dioxide pipeline has been the most divisive and emotional issue I think I've ever dealt with as State Farm Bureau president here in South Dakota. It has to do with property rights. Property rights are the basis of our policy in Farm Bureau. And there are some people that are very, very opposed to the pipeline coming through, and that's their right as property owners. But the other side of it is there are people that have signed easements already, and they would like to see that go through for whatever reason, whether it's the opportunity to improve their business or their operation, or maybe financial security for their families. But that's been going on for a while now, and the reason we put the press release out this time is because the legislature has a bill that's going through the process right now that would disallow the use of eminent domain for carbon dioxide pipelines. And we believe that's not good policy to put an absolute on something like that. Actually, our members a year or so ago put in the policy that if that we're not in favor of using eminent domain for a project like this or anything else, unless 2/3 of the property owners along the line voluntarily signed up. And in that case, then they should be able to use it within the guidelines and the laws that govern it.
So you're taking the supermajority approach, in essence, saying if it works for the legislature, it should, or Congress, it should work for this. What kind of feedback are you getting since you issued that press release about it?
We've had a few questions and a few calls here and there, but I think people understand because part of the rationale also behind it is we're continually looking for new markets for our products. And if the carbon dioxide pipeline goes through, there's a possibility that there'll be a corn plant built about 40 miles from us that would produce sustainable aviation fuel. And that would be a new market that we probably could never flood, and that would be good for agriculture. Now, having said that, some people would say you're selling your soul to the devil and things like that, but we don't really believe that, and we believe that even if the Z45 issue goes away with the new administration in place, that's kind of a question mark too, is where we'll be with that. But that could probably get built anyway if the company that wants to build the pipeline wants to do it bad enough. So it just comes down to willpower and working with landowners. And again, property rights are number one. And making sure that landowners are treated fairly is something that's very important to us.
So explain to my audience here, how is it right now? If according to the entire length of that pipeline project, if one landowner refused to let it go through, it would hold up the whole thing? Is that the way it is set up right now?
Right now, the real issue is whether carbon dioxide is considered a commodity, which would qualify to be used or to use eminent domain. There has been a court decision in regard to the ability to survey, but we think it's probably still a little bit up in the air as to whether they ultimately could use eminent domain once they have a permit from the Public Utilities Commission.
That's an interesting angle on it. I hadn't quite heard that one yet. All right, there has been some discussion too, Scott, that if South Dakota just proves to be too hard of a nut to crack, there are talks about maybe going through Minnesota instead or something. Is that a real possibility, or what kind of impact would that have on South Dakota producers or landowners?
Well, I'm not sure about that as far as whether that's feasible to go up through Minnesota or not. Certainly, if everybody around us does it, and our ethanol plants, for instance, are frozen out of a market like that, that wouldn't be good for us to be an island. And I understand that the other states involved pretty much have everything ready to go. I think in Iowa, that's all contingent upon South Dakota approving it to go through. So, yeah, we realize where we're at here. But we have a lot of new legislators. There was a bill last year, Senate Bill 201, that gave landowners some additional protections, we believed, and some things like $1 a foot payment per year. Half would have gone to the landowners and half to the counties on those pipelines that go through. That was referred, however, to a vote of the people, and it was voted down during the general election. So that was what we thought was a pretty good compromise, but the voters didn't see it that way. And about the same time, a lot of the legislators that had supported the CO2 pipeline were defeated in their primaries. So we have a lot of new legislators involved as well.
Well, there's a lot of stuff up in the air. So if you didn't get the dollar a foot, I'll just call it a reward to the landowner for letting it go through, what would the farmers stand to gain? Have you put an amount to that as far as what maybe difference that would make for the value of the corn that they deliver to the elevator?
Well, really, the $1 a foot was to let the landowners that sold an easement participate in the profits of the pipeline over the next several years. And we thought that was fair. From what we hear, there's a lot of money in it, and the landowners just thought that would be, and we thought that would be fair for them. If that doesn't happen, it's all open in negotiation when they deal with the pipeline company and negotiate an easement price. So that would be what the landowner has left to deal with.
How much of this hinges on the 45Z rule?
Well, we're told that if the tax credits aren't there, in other words, sequestering carbon up in North Dakota, that the sustainable aviation fuel won't work from that perspective to build a new plant and put it up. I don't know if that's actually the real case or not. When we have a different situation now with the new administration in place, and I think there's not going to be the emphasis on that. The climate change agenda certainly isn't there like it was before. And I will tell you, most people in South Dakota don't subscribe to the climate change agenda, and that's a lot of the reason that they're opposed to this pipeline, is because they don't think that should be necessary. People like to say, carbon dioxide is plant food. We need that to make plants grow, and that's exactly right. And people think it's just a waste to bury it in the ground. So we really have a conundrum. It's something that the bottom line goal is something that a lot of people don't believe in, but it has to be put in the ground basically to be able to qualify for those tax credits to make this fuel work.
There are already carbon CO2, I should say, pipelines in other parts of the country already. It's not like this would be the first one, right?
That's right. They're already doing it in Illinois. I'm not sure about Iowa. I know some folks in Illinois that said that there is at least one plant that has the sequestration wells right there on their property. So they don't depend on a pipeline or anything, and within hours or maybe even closer than that, when the corn gets processed, the CO2 goes down in the ground. So yeah, it's not a new thing. It's being done, but in order to really catch on and be widespread, they'd have to add a lot of capacity.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to explain this. I know you're very busy, and I appreciate that a lot. We'll try and keep tabs on developments on this. Even if they did get things settled out, how long do you think it would take to build that pipeline?
Well, I think it'd be a couple of years yet, because they got started signing easements, but they'll have to go back and try to repair relationships with landowners. And there may be some places where they'll have to reroute the pipeline depending on whether they can use eminent domain or not. The pipeline company that was working to build it, and still is, they've put their application in. They were not very friendly to landowners. They kind of carried a big stick and threatened eminent domain right off the bat, and people don't react kindly to that. So my advice to them and the people that are leading it was to go back and try to rebuild those relationships, and then be willing to move the pipeline or add some more money for an easement or whatever they need to do to get it done.
Well, Scott, thanks again for the time. Scott VanderWal, president of the South Dakota Farm Bureau. Appreciate that very much. And thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure to visit with you. That'll do it for this episode. And for producer Brianne Jenkins, I'm Marlin Bohling. We'll catch you next time here on the Comstock channel. Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and or options is substantial, and each investor and or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.